The year is 1942. The sun bleeds across the North African horizon, casting long, somber shadows over the sand. In a canvas tent, amidst the swirling dust and the dying light, a field marshal sits alone. Erwin Rommel, the celebrated desert fox, confronts not the enemy, but a far more unforgiving foe, the cruel arithmetic of the desert. His legendary Afrika Corps, a force that had once seemed invincible, is broken. Just 40 miles, a mere stone's throw from the Suez Canal and the promise of a decisive victory, his 300 Panzers had ground to a halt, not from enemy fire but from empty fuel tanks. This is not a story of battlefield valor alone, but of the silent, relentless war of logistics, a war that Rommel, in his pursuit of tactical brilliance, had tragically underestimated. It's a story of how a campaign of daring maneuver was ultimately undone by the simple, brutal reality of supply and demand, written in the unforgiving sands of Egypt. This is the epitaph of the 300 tanks that almost conquered a continent. Our story begins a year earlier, in February 1941, under the bright, hopeful sun of Tripoli. The docks bustle with a new kind of energy. A formidable force, the vanguard of what would become the Deutsches Afrikakorps, disembarks onto African soil. 300 German panzers, mostly nimble Panzer IIIs armed with 50mm guns, and the more powerful short-barreled Panzer IVs roll onto the quay. To the men watching, it was poetry in motion. These steel beasts, painted in their factory gray before being hastily camouflaged with desert ochre, represented the pinnacle of Germany's blitzkrieg doctrine. They were fast, they were deadly, and they were led by a general whose audacity was already becoming a legend. Rommel wasted no time. While his superiors in Berlin urged caution, he saw weakness in the overstretched British forces. He unleashed his panzers in a whirlwind offensive, a masterclass in combined arms warfare. The British, reeling from their own logistical strains, were caught off guard. The Afrika Corps swept across Libya, recapturing lost ground with breathtaking speed. Rommel's tactics were brilliant. He used flanking maneuvers, feints, and the desert itself as a weapon, creating dust clouds to simulate larger forces. The British Eighth Army was sent reeling, and the legend of the Desert Fox was born. In these early days, victory seemed not just possible, but preordained. The panzers were a symbol of German might, and the path to Egypt looked clear. The logistical serpent, however, was already stirring beneath the sand. As Rommel's forces surged eastward across Cyrenaica, the mirage of victory shimmered ever brighter. The city of Tobruk, a vital deep-water port, became the focal point of the campaign. Its capture would dramatically shorten the supply lines that were already beginning to strain, but the stubborn defense by Australian and British troops turned Tobruk into a thorn in Rommel's side. The siege dragged on, and with every mile his panzers pushed forward, the umbilical cord stretching back to Tripoli grew longer and more fragile. The desert itself began to exact a heavy toll. This was an environment hostile to man and machine alike. The fine, abrasive sand infiltrated every moving part of the panzers. It clogged air filters, wore down engine cylinders, and ground down the teeth of gearboxes. The relentless heat caused engines to overheat and track pins to shear. A Panzer III, a marvel of German engineering, had an operational range of about 100 miles on a full tank of fuel on good roads. In the deep, soft sand of the desert, that range could be halved. Fuel consumption became a monstrous problem. For every gallon of fuel used in combat, several more were needed just to transport that gallon from the port to the front line. The science of logistics, a discipline Rommel had once dismissed as something for quartermasters to worry about, was becoming the central, defining feature of his campaign. The poetry of motion was slowly, inexorably, giving way to the grinding prose of attrition. The logistics of thirst and steel defined the war. Let's look at the brutal math. The Afrika Corps required a minimum of 30,000 tons of supplies per month to remain combat effective. At its peak, it needed closer to 70,000. Yet, the Axis supply convoys, sailing across a Mediterranean increasingly dominated by the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force based in Malta, were lucky to deliver 20,000 tons. Ships were sunk with alarming regularity, sending precious fuel, ammunition, and replacement parts to the bottom of the sea. What little did arrive at Tripoli or the smaller port of Benghazi then had to embark on a perilous 1,000-mile journey overland to the front. This immense logistical chain was the real battlefield. In the spring of 1942, Rommel orchestrated his masterpiece, the Battle of Gazala, In a daring flanking maneuver, he swung his armored division south around the British defensive line and struck from the rear. It was a brilliant, audacious plan that resulted in a stunning victory and finally, the capture of Tobruk. The fall of the port yielded a massive bounty of supplies, including fuel, which temporarily quenched the Afrika Korps' thirst. Intoxicated by this success, Rommel disobeyed orders to halt and consolidate. He convinced both Hitler and Mussolini to allow him to pursue the shattered British Eighth Army into Egypt. He was gambling everything on one final, decisive thrust to the Suez Canal, believing the British were on the verge of total collapse. The gamble would lead him straight to a little-known railway stop called El Alamein. Now only 40 miles separated Rommel from Alexandria and the Nile Delta, but those 40 miles might as well have been an ocean. The British, under their new commander, Bernard Montgomery, had fallen back to the El Alamein line. This was a defensive position unlike any other in the desert. It was a narrow bottleneck, just 40 miles wide, anchored by the Mediterranean Sea to the north and the impassable salt marshes of the Qattara Depression to the south. There was no flank to turn. For the first time, Rommel could not rely on his trademark maneuvers. He had to face the British head-on. In a battle of pure attrition, he was ill-equipped to fight. His tanks, the heroes of Gazala, were now running on fumes. The supplies captured at Tobruk had been consumed in the race across the desert. The long supply line from Tripoli was stretched to its breaking point, constantly harassed by Allied aircraft. The Panzers of the 15th and 21st Divisions, their engines silent, became static pillboxes scattered across the sand. Crews sat helplessly, listening to the drone of Allied bombers overhead, waiting for fuel that would never come. The physical distance of 40 miles had become an insurmountable wall, built not of bricks and mortar, but of empty jerry cans and broken supply lines. The desperation was palpable. Rommel's frantic appeals for more fuel were met with promises that couldn't be kept. The cruel arithmetic had caught up with him. The blitzkrieg was over, bogged down in the sands of El Alamein, its steel heart starved of the lifeblood it needed to advance. In the quiet aftermath, as the remnants of his army began the long, bitter retreat back across Libya, Rommel had time to reflect. "The battle is fought and decided by the quartermasters before the shooting begins," he wrote, a stark confession from a man who had built his career on tactical genius. He had mastered the art of maneuver, but had neglected the science of supply. He had believed that boldness and speed could overcome any obstacle, but he learned, at the cost of his army, that they could not overcome an empty fuel tank. The legacy of the North African campaign is complex. It cemented Rommel's reputation as one of history's great battlefield commanders. But it also stands as a timeless lesson in the primacy of logistics. Modern military academies study El Alamein not just for Montgomery's methodical victory, but for Rommel's catastrophic logistical defeat. The 300 panzers that arrived in Tripoli with such promise ended their journey as silent, sun-bleached monuments in the Egyptian desert. Their story is a somber epitaph, a reminder that wars are won not just by brave soldiers and brilliant generals, but by the anonymous heroes who drive the trucks, load the ships, and keep the engines running. For without them, even the mightiest war machine is just scrap metal, waiting for the desert to claim it. Thank you for watching. If you found this piece of history interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world.